All right, we're going to journey way back in time today. We're talking about one single, absolutely brutal day in the year 732, a day that, believe it or not, would help decide the future of an entire continent. So, could one day really define a continent's future? It sounds kind of dramatic, doesn't it? But for this moment in history, the answer is a definite yes. You see, two massive empires were on a collision course, and the fate of Europe was literally hanging in the balance. On one side, we have the Frankish Kingdom, which ruled over what is now modern-day France and Germany. And on the other, the gigantic Umayyad Caliphate, a massive Islamic empire that stretched all the way from the Middle East across North Africa and deep into Spain. And these two superpowers? They were about to meet. So, how did these two giants end up on a collision course right in the heart of France? Well, let's set the stage. Okay, so you have to understand, the Umayyad Caliphate was this seemingly unstoppable force. By the early 700s, they had just swept across North Africa, conquered what we now call Spain and Portugal, and they were looking north. Their next prize? The rich territory of the Franks, just over the Pyrenees Mountains. Every great battle has great leaders at its heart. And this one? It had two of the most brilliant military minds of their time. Leading the Franks was a man with one of the greatest nicknames in all of history, Charles the Hammer Martel. Now, here's a fun fact. Charles Martel wasn't actually a king. His official title was mayor of the palace, but make no mistake, he was the one with all the real power. He knew that to stop a professional invading army, he couldn't just rely on farmers with pitchforks. He needed his own professional soldiers. So he spent years building a disciplined, full-time army, and he earned his nickname the Hammer by, well, crushing anyone who stood in his way. And commanding the invading Umayyad forces was the very experienced and ambitious governor of Al-Andalus, Abdurrahman al-Ghafiqi. Al-Ghafiqi was a brave and incredibly successful general, fresh off of many victories. His goal was simple: push into Frankish territory, capture its wealthy cities, and expand his caliphate's borders. His main weapon was the lightning-fast speed of his light cavalry. But he made one critical miscalculation. He completely underestimated the organized professional army that Martel had waiting for him. So this sets up a classic military showdown. It was a battle of discipline versus speed, of heavy, grinding infantry against light, nimble cavalry. And here's where you can really see how these two armies were complete opposites. The Franks were basically a wall of heavy infantry in thick armor. The Umayyad army, on the other hand, was all about speed, light cavalry that could strike fast and then just disappear. Martel knew his foot soldiers were way too slow to chase down horses, so he had to outthink his opponent, not outrun him. And his brilliant idea was a strategy that was already ancient back in the 8th century: the phalanx. It's a simple but incredibly effective concept. You just pack your soldiers so tightly together, shoulder to shoulder, with their shields locked, that you create a human wall. So here's how Martel put this ancient strategy into action, and it was brilliant. First, he picked his spot perfectly: a high, wooded hill. Why? Because it meant the enemy cavalry couldn't just ride around his army to attack from the sides. Smart. Then he formed his men into that massive phalanx, and they just stood there, disciplined and silent. One historian actually called them a wall of ice. The plan was simple: let the enemy's fast cavalry smash itself to pieces against their unmoving shield. So the stage was set, and for nearly a week, the two armies just stared at each other across a field. It was this incredibly tense standoff where nobody wanted to make the first mistake. For 7 whole days, there were just minor skirmishes. The weather got colder, which was bad news for the lightly dressed Umayyad soldiers, but totally fine for the heavily clothed Franks. You can see why al-Ghafiqi was hesitant to charge his cavalry uphill into that solid wall of infantry. But finally, on the 7th day, he ordered the attack. The battle raged for hours. That Frankish wall held firm against charge after charge. And then, right at the height of the fighting, something totally unexpected happened. A rumor started to fly. The rumor was that Frankish scouts had somehow slipped around the main battle and were attacking the Umayyad camp. You know, the camp where all the soldiers were keeping the treasure and loot they had gathered during their campaign? Instantly, thinking their hard-won treasure was about to be stolen, some of the Umayyad cavalry broke away from the main fight and raced back to defend their camp. Now, this small movement had a massive effect. Others saw them riding away and thought it was a general retreat. Panic and confusion just spread like wildfire, and the disciplined Umayyad lines began to completely fall apart. And in the middle of all that chaos, as he tried desperately to rally his men and restore order, Abdurrahman al-Ghafiqi was surrounded and killed. With their leader gone, the Umayyad army completely broke and fled under the cover of darkness. The next morning, the Franks woke up, looked out, and found the enemy camp completely empty. The battle was over, but its consequences, they were just beginning. This year, 732, would go down as one of the most critical turning points in world history. So why was it such a big deal? Well, this one victory had huge consequences. First, it slammed the door shut on the Umayyad Caliphate's expansion into the rest of Europe. Second, it basically made the Franks the new superpower on the continent. Charles the Hammer became a hero, and his victory paved the way for his grandson, the legendary Emperor Charlemagne. And finally, it sent a message to every army in Europe. Disciplined infantry could, in fact, beat a seemingly unstoppable cavalry. When you look back, the Battle of Tours was, without a doubt, a moment that helped shape the entire future of Western Europe. And it leaves us with this one massive question, right? If that wall of ice had broken on that day back in 732, how different would our world be today?